I think there's this idea, because maybe of Hollywood or movies, that, you know, someone is abducted and then they're forced into a brothel and they're chained to a radiator and they're forced to do these things all day and they, you know, receive these horrible beatings. And yes, that happens. And we've seen cases like that. Horrific situations, even in Wilmington. But more often than not, you're looking at a child who has suffered from some sort of abuse, whether it was verbal or physical or sexual, as a young child, that has sort of molded them from the very beginning that love comes with a price. And as they begin to mature, you know, someone else comes along and reinforces that idea. And so by the time someone introduces this idea of this thing you've been giving away for free since you were a child, right? We can make money on this and we can do it together and we can be a family. And it's like this line that you're like, well, I didn't ever want to step over this line, but it's kind of what's been happening to me, you know, my whole life. And it happens so easily. And I think that's what's surprising to people is, you know, you encounter this girl in a hotel or motel room and she appears to be a prostitute, and whether she's 15 or 16 or 20, that's the crime that's being committed. What she's doing is a criminal act, as opposed to what's being done to her. And that's the shift that we've really tried to work on at A Safe Place, is seeing that she is a victim of exploitation, no matter how you define it, right? And she's being exploited by the buyers, and she's being exploited by the facilitators, the traffickers, or the pimps, and those are the folks that are getting something out of it. She's getting nothing besides more trauma and more exploitation, and becoming more deeply ingrained in the idea that my life is quid pro quo, my body for anything else, for survival. I've been doing this work for a decade in different capacities, and I think what's true for so many of us is realizing that it could have been you. It could have been someone close to you. Someone once told me, you know, we're all one crisis away from falling into the ravine. And I think that that's true. You know, the first two commandments, you know, love God and love your neighbor. And this definition of neighbor, right? I think that's what keeps me up at night. People say sometimes, well, I have a heart for Africa, or I have a heart for Latin America, and I've served in those places. And I realize that I don't have a heart for a particular geographic region. I have a heart for someone who knows what it's like to stand on the outside and tap on the window and hope that someone taps back, that they look back, that they reach out, that you're not in isolation. And so I think what keeps me up at night sometimes is thinking of all the girls, even just in Wilmington, that are curled up in a ball on a hotel bed after, you know, unbelievable trauma, and hoping that someone, somewhere, will find her and tap back and call out and reach out. And that's the thing that keeps us going, you know, is that for every girl that we watch her relax into her own being and her own self and her own freedom and her own choices, because it's not a choice if you don't have options. And that's what we really try to do at A Safe Place, is to say, what would life look like if you got to redefine it? And walking through that with folks has been the biggest privilege of my life. And I think that's the reason that we will keep doing this work.